Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third day, which is also the last day of the Sonic Ecology Conference presented by Hong Kong New Music Ensemble. Today, we are going to start the conference with a presentation presented by a team from the US. Welcome, guys. Today, the presentation topic is Rhumb-Line, Anthropocenic sound mapping on the web. So now I'm going to pass the time to the team. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we'll quickly introduce ourselves. So I am Dr. Margaret SCHEDEL. I am a professor at Stony Brook University, and I also teach at Peabody Conservatory. And today I'm going to explain the origin of the piece, a bit about the title, and why frogs are so important for ecology.
Hello, I'm Brian Smith. I'm a percussionist who's interested in robotics, and I was introduced to the concept of percussion and robotics through Meg SCHEDEL, who was my advisor. She was on my doctoral panel when I was a doctoral student at Stony Brook University. So tonight I'm going to be talking about the instrument design and some of the research and construction that I went through in the construction of the frogs that are used in this installation.
Hi all, my name's Robert Cosgrove. I'm a percussionist and I'm a current doctoral candidate at Stony Brook University. My role in
Hello, I'm Nick Huang. I'm a composer and sonic artist, and I am at the University of Wisconsin at Whitewater. I will be speaking about the internet interface.
So I had the idea for this piece when I came home after a deep listening retreat. So deep listening is a sonic meditation practice that was started by Pauline Oliveros, and we would go on these week-long retreats to really focus on listening. And I grew up in New Jersey on 2.5 acres of woods. We had a stream. It was on top of a mountain. And I always loved listening to the frogs and was always aware of the pond at the bottom of the driveway, that it would change shape with the weather, and that the frogs would be on the perimeter of the pond. And I was jet lagged. I was really used to walking around at night without a flashlight because that's what we did at the deep listening retreats. And I realized that I could intuit the shape of the pond from just the sound of the frogs. And I was like, this would make such an amazing installation. And so fast forward 12 years, and finally I was able to do an installation with the help of many of my friends, which is great. So we collectively decided to call this piece Rhumb-Line, because in this piece we're using our ears to do the mapping rather than our eyes. So a Rhumb-Line is an arc which crosses all the meridians of longitude at the same angle. What this means is it's a path with a constant bearing as measured relative to true or magnetic north. So if you follow a compass, you will actually trace a spiral pattern on the globe. And this will appear as a straight line on a Mercator projection, which is how we see maps usually, but it is this spiral on a globe. And I thought that was a really lovely example of how something can be mapped in two different ways. And it also sort of references the cochlea, the spiral that's in our ears. The reason that we thought that this project would make a good submission for this conference is because frogs are huge signifiers of climate change. So according to the Declining Amphibious Populations Task Force, since the 1970s, at least 200 frog species have been lost. There are currently nearly as many species of amphibians that are categorized as threatened as those of threatened birds and mammals put together, with an estimated 40% of amphibious species in danger of extinction. There's a lot of reasons behind this. So with these early thaw and then these winter relapses, it kills the tadpoles that have started to come out of their eggs. This earlier hatching also causes interspecies competition, where things are very timed in nature, and if the frogs hatch earlier, maybe they'll get eaten by salamanders. The precipitation variability that we've been having also causes problems, and the reduced depths of ponds basically cause the frogs to suffer radiation poisoning from sunlight. There's tremendous habitat loss, both on land and in the water. And road salt from the land that leaches into the ponds is a tremendous problem. So overall, there's been an increase in disease and a decrease in nutrition. And it's a big problem. So I wanted to create this installation that had the sound of frogs. And I originally thought of guiros.
So my role in this installation was really developing the sounding mechanism. And Rhumb-Line, as it exists now, features 19 spindle motor frogs. They mimic the sound produced by frog guiros, pictured here, which are played by scraping the ridges along the back of this wooden amphibian spine. And I'll say, note the curve of the spine, because that curve actually featured into the design of the robotic version of this. But I'll say that robotically replicating the sounds produced by these human-performed instruments, these frog guiros, was a significant design challenge that required many, developments and iterative development process that involved creating many different prototypes. So the next slide, please. So pictured here is the model currently deployed in Rhumb-Line. Each robotic frog guiro is quasi-frog shaped. It has a body, it has feet, and it has a motorized vocal mechanism. And the vocal mechanism is composed of a harvested DVD spindle motor. So that's what's on the top there. It was just pulled from a DVD player or a CD player. That's what that motor is. And there is an affixed wooden plectrum on the top of that motor that scrapes a wooden dowel built into the body of each frog collar. And this scraping sound produces the characteristic croak of a frog guiro. The plectra and dowels that they're constructed from various materials, which gives each frog a unique voice and character. Next slide. So while the individual frogs are what we would call diacritically designed, they each have a unique call that comes from a unique location. So too is the design of their formation, which you can see here. This formation can be configured in many different shapes and sizes, which allows Rhumb-Line to assume numerous physical and sonic forms. When the exhibition is experienced in person, as it was here, visitors listen from what we say is outside the pond, behind a veil made of black speaker cloth that is visually opaque, but acoustically transparent. So you can hear through it with no difficulty, but you can't see through it. This image here is from the physical in-person beta release of the installation. That was at the exhibition in February 2020 at Stony Brook University. And you can see a little bit of a formation here, and what visitors were doing physically was listening behind a black veil and having to listen and use the sound as Rhumb lines and guess this shape. So we'll look at the next slide. So for the internet installation, which is the way this exists now because of the global pandemic, the veil is it's through the website. It's a technological shielding of the visual signal, and visitors listen from what we say is inside the pond through a motorized head, which is pictured here on the left, and that head has embedded ambisonic microphones in the ears. The ambisonic microphones capture and convey an accurate 3D image of the sonic environment. In other words, what we could call an acousmatic image. And using a dial on the website, listeners are able to actually turn this head 180 degrees across the horizontal plane, which is roughly the range of an actual human head. And I will also tell you that we have called the head that's in the center of this installation, which is at Stony Brook University right now, the name of the head is Ob. So what happens next is a series of videos. So this is the first of a short series of videos that really show the evolution of the design of the frogs from concept to how they exist now in the installation. And in this first one, this is the very first prototype. It's played manually, obviously, by my hand, but it shows the design concept and the design decision to position the scraping implement on the inside of the curved area rather than on the outside, which is how it is on a frog guido. When you're scraping along the back, you're actually scraping from the outside of the curve, and we're actually here scraping from the inside of the curve, and that has made the design really effective. So next one. So this video shows the first motorized or robotic adaptation of that fundamental design concept. And there were two discoveries from this prototype. One, the very fast speed of the DVD motors reduces the need to have multiple dowels so close to each other. And two, a plastic plectra, which is what's on top of the motor here, sounds terrible. So this video shows some of the timbral changes that you get with a wooden plectrum and some of the qualitative changes that you get when you're just scraping fewer dowels. So even though there's a number of dowels that are on the body of the frog here, there's actually only 2 or 3 that are being scraped because most of them have been bent out of the range, or as you can see, broken out of the range of the plectrum. So this was the first experiment with multiple frog collars and various plectra and dowel top types, including threaded rods. And you can also see how messy the process was. There's all sorts of broken things on the table. And the original frog guido was on the table as well. So this video shows a test with a refined design. This is basically the design that we're using now for the installation, both in person and online, really just online these days, and testing the AI infrastructure that we use to activate the frogs, which Rob will be talking about in a little bit. So finally, each frog is connected via a DC power cable. You probably saw a cable coming out of the body of each frog to one of 12 ports on one of 2 Data Machine Automat controllers. The Data Machine Automat controller is pictured here. It's a controller that processes MIDI signals. And so it's these MIDI signals that are sent from the computer to the data machine and then from the data machine to the motors on the frogs, and that makes them go. The automat was designed by Johannes Lobieler, who's a creative music technologist in Germany.
So in constructing the AI part of the project, there were a few compositional questions that we wanted to consider. So firstly, how can we transform the rhythmic inputs into something noticeably different, but at the same time connected to the original? Also, how will we negotiate the range of different inputs that are coming into the system? And additionally, how do we make a linear pattern out of these disparate inputs? So in essence, one might see it as creating a symbiosis between the users, the frogs, and the composer or programmer. In order to negotiate these different balances, like checks and balances, we considered a range of different architectures and methods to mutate the rhythm, all evolutionary in nature. Initially, the system was pre-composed, but we really wanted to have this interactive quality. In this sort of evolutionary algorithm, rhythmic motifs have their own fitness and lifespan, eventually terminating themselves or mutating into something new. We decided to use Max to create the system, specifically using Bach and Cage, which are tools on Max to aid computer composition, and are created by Danielle Gizi and Andrea Agostini. The way that the system works is we give each user 5 seconds to a 5-second window to interact with a frog of their choosing. Each click initiates a bang in Max. A bang is basically a cue for the frog to vocalize. Each bang is recorded into a rhythm. A new rhythm is iterated for each frog. And with each iteration, the rhythm is denatured in various ways. So it's either displaced or granulated of these small to large sections of the rhythmic pattern. And this is all dependent on tempo, motif, timing, and spacing of the original input. You can see here on the right an inputted rhythm followed by the 5th iteration of the rhythm. You'll notice that the mutated rhythm maintains some temporal and motivic features from the original. And as you can imagine, once you get to 11th or 12th iteration, it becomes less and less clear. The physical materials we use for the frogs add another layer to the algorithm. The frogs themselves change over time. The wood and cardboard wears down. We've even had some of our motors burn out. And also the way that the humans and the human user chooses to sound within the space affects this rate of decomposition. A more active user may cause more damage to a frog than a less active one, for example. The parallel is not lost to the ways humans affect the ecosystems that surround us. As this project could go on for a while and is constantly changing, we hope in the future to bring a long-term impact of the user to the forefront of the experience. What is the legacy of the user's interaction, and how can that be conveyed within the duration of their stay in the installation?
My involvement was bringing the user interactions to the internet version of Rhumb-Line. I had been working on a networking tool called Collab Hub, which allows remote users to connect and easily send different types of data to each other. We use this system to serve a web interface that connects users from anywhere with an internet connection to be connected to the instrument. We developed the web interface that allowed remote users to tap rhythms and control the frogs, like previously described. And we wanted to curate the experience so that the users at first would be able to tap and listen to their unique sounds and formation. And then on the second page of the interface, pulling away the acousmatic veil, so to speak, we reveal the live feed of the actuators and the rotating microphone head in action. Users can tap on the buttons connected to a frog and control the dial connected to the rotating ambisonic microphone head. The remote server keeps track of the number of users connected, as well as when a user is tapping a specific button, and disables that particular button for all other users until a preset duration. The controls and live feeds allow many users throughout the internet to simultaneously control the many frogs and experience the collective sonic result.
So we thought we'd end with just a video of the original in-person installation, and we can provide a URL to the installation, but sadly power outage and we need to reset everything, but it will be working this week. But in the meantime, here is a video of the original in-person installation of Rhumb-Line. Thank you very much. And we have time for questions now.
Thank you. Thank you for your inspiring presentation. Is there any question from the participants? You can either unmute your mic and speak up, or you can type your question in the chat box.
I'll ask Nick a question.
Okay.
Nick, what other projects have you created with Colab Hub? Like what else would that be useful for?
Some other applications that people have used Colab Hub for are helping to coordinate timing for musicians that are maybe following a score and they happen to be in different locations. You know, with the pandemic, everyone is not necessarily in the same spot. It's tough to be in the same spot now. And so for musicians that are maybe trying to rehearse or actually perform telematically, you can use Colab Hub to synchronize the start and stop of events, as well as sending control data. Let's say in a laptop ensemble or laptop orchestra, you want to be able, you still are in this remote separated topology, and you want to send either information to me or to Meg, or me to Meg and Brian, that same data if we want to, then we have it set up so that you can use a web interface or everyone's using a Max interface, send that data to each other, and you would tag it like you would typically like an OSC message.
Mm-hmm. That would be very useful for site-specific performance as well.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Any more questions, thoughts? If not, then maybe we can close the session earlier and then we prepare for the next session. Thank you, Margaret, Brian, Rob, and Nick for the wonderful presentation and very inspiring work of you guys.
Thank you so much for having us. That was my final comment, was thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.